Okay, in this video I want to discuss a few tips and tricks that might speed up your workflow as you write your code here in Visual Studio. So we've talked about variables quite a bit, we've talked about various statements, and in some of the upcoming lessons we'll discuss loops. But before moving on, I thought it would be a good idea to discuss a few tips and tricks. Now, I've already mentioned a few things. So for example, the comments, you can comment out selected lines. Okay, you can click these buttons, for example, right? And again, the commenting will depend on your selection. So here, if I have lines selected like this, and I do a comment, you'll get a multi-line comment like this. If your text cursor, it's also known as the caret, and you might prefer to use the caret term over the cursor, since that can be confused with the mouse cursor. So maybe it's a good idea if I do that in these tutorial videos. Okay, so if I have that caret placed in this line and I click again that comment, then of course it'll comment out that entire line using these double forward slashes, single line comments, as you can see. I'll just uncomment, and of course the keyboard shortcuts for that is right in here. So you do Control K and then Control C. Now for the most part I click these buttons, more convenient for me personally, or I just write the comments out. So Control K and then Control C to comment, Control K again, and Control U to uncomment. Okay, then you have a few more things. So for example, if I have something selected like this, a few basic things, of course you can go to Edit, and then you can do Cut, Copy, Paste. You can see the shortcuts. Copy is Control C, Cut is Control X, Paste is Control V. And you see you also have a Show Clipboard History. Now we'll talk about that in a second here. But again, you can do Control C and then Control V, or you can do Control X as well. And to select something like this, you can of course left click and drag to select like that, or you can double click. So let's say I want to select this word here, you can just double click. So health here or character, just double click on that. And you can also, with the caret again placed within that word that you want to select, then you can just press Control W. Okay, and that will also Control W again, and that will also select that entire word. And then what you can do is, let's say I want to move, so I have the caret here, and instead of moving forward one character at a time, let's say I want to move throughout this line, kind of jump ahead one operator or one word at a time, I can press and hold Control, and then I can use the arrow key. So you can see it will jump operators and words. So again, that is Control and the left and right arrow keys. And I can do something similar to select. So you can press and hold Shift. Okay, so I'll just press and hold Shift here, and then you can select one character at a time. So I'll just press and hold Shift here. Okay, you can do something like that. Or what you can do is you can press and hold Control and Shift. So you remember, if you press and hold Control, you jump entire words or characters or operators. And what you can do is you can press and hold Control and Shift, and then use again the arrow. So in this case I'll use the right arrow, and that will select again entire words and operators. So let's say I want to select this entire string, and you can go and left click and drag to do a selection that way, or you can press and hold Control and Shift and just select, and you can go back and forth to like add or remove from your selection. So what's cool about this is, let's say I want to delete these two lines, I can place the caret right here, press and hold Shift, and then use the down arrow. You can select both of those lines really quickly now, and now you can go and delete those, or Control K and Control C to comment those out. You can use those buttons as well if you want to do that. Or down here, press and hold Shift and the up arrow, tap the up arrow, and you can add to your selection that way. Shift and the down arrow will remove from your selection. Let's say I want to delete this line here. I might have added this extra line, this int health, accidentally. So I can go back, pressing and holding Shift, tap the down arrow, and you can see that that removes from my active selection. Now I can delete that line if I want to, comment it out, or whatever I want to do. Another shortcut I like to mention is going to the start or the end of a line. So what you can do is you can press Home to go to the start of a line. You can always go here and click at the start or end of the line to place that text cursor, or the caret. So let's say from here I want to go to the end. You simply press the End key. Now I'm not using the numeric keypad for this. I'm using the other keys to the left of the numeric keypad. Where I have the Insert key, just press Home, and you can see the caret jumps to the start of that line now. Now of course it won't go all the way back. That's because it has this tab here, and it has to do with formatting and indentation. So it's going to jump right here at the start of this text here, basically. Okay, so it's going to kind of ignore this tab and go to the start of where our indentation is. So again, go to the end, you just tap End once and it goes to the end. Home, again go to the start, you just tap the Home key. Okay, so we've seen how to navigate using the End and the Home keys. Now we can also select using those keys. So if I have the cursor right at the start of a line, like down here for example, Compression Alt Shift, and then tap End, you can see that will select that entire line. Similarly, if the cursor is right at the end of that line, press Alt Shift, tap the Home key, and you can see that will select that entire line again. So it's not just for navigation. In combination with the Shift key, we can also use the Home and the End keys to select entire lines. Okay, so let's say we want to rename a variable, or we want to change a string literal like this one. Now typically what you do is you would go and left click, okay, right at the end, and then you would use the backspace to go and remove those characters. Now another thing you could do is you can left click right at the front of that, so where the string of characters starts that you want to kind of remove or change, and then you can press delete. So instead of working from the back, okay, forward, you can start right at the front here of this string of characters and kind of delete from the front to the back by using the delete key. So again, with my text cursor or caret right there, tap the delete key and you'll see it will start to remove from the front. Of course, what you can do is you can double click, or select that word. The entire word will highlight, and then you can press delete. And similarly, what you can do is you can start typing. So with that word selected, again, you can double click or have the cursor right in there, Control W to select it. And now that that is selected, as soon as we start typing, that will simply delete and, kind of replace that with whatever it is that we type. So something like that, okay? Okay, I'd like to briefly introduce the insert versus the overtype modes. Now these are not unique to Visual Studio. You'll find them in other programs like Word, for example. And at some point you might have pressed the insert key instead of delete or home, for example. And then it's like, what's going on? As I type, things behave completely different than what I'm used to. And then you're probably in the overtype mode. So by default, we typically use the insert mode, okay? New characters will be inserted at the caret's current position, which is also known as the insert point, incrementing the position of those characters that follow. So all of those characters that follow will move one position to the right, basically. Okay, they'll kind of move up one position. And then we also have the overtype or the overwrite mode, which will overwrite any character that is present on the caret's current position. Now, of course, the position of the characters that follow do not change unless you go and delete a character. And you toggle between these modes using that insert key. Now, thankfully, we also have a great way of visualizing the mode that we are in. As we've seen in the insert mode, we have like that vertical flashing cursor. And it's like it is always kind of between two characters. It doesn't like take up a character space. It's more like it is between two characters. Then in the overtype or overwrite mode, it's almost like it selects a character space. Okay, that flashing will kind of highlight an entire space where a character would be. And so this is a great visual indicator of of the different mode, and the fact that if you have that character selected, for example, in the overtype mode, you start typing, of course, it'll overwrite that character position. Whereas if you have that in the insert mode, of course, it's going to insert a new character at that position and move the other characters to the right, for example. Okay, so just a brief introduction to these two modes, because I'm not assuming that you are familiar with these modes. Another thing you can do is you can use insert. So tap the insert key and you'll see that this caret will change now, and you'll see it'll have that first character selected. Now in some cases, like the DOS prompt, Control F5 to run this quickly here, you will see right here we have this caret as well, that text cursor, and you can see it is different here. It's like an underscore, right? It has a different cursor basically than what we have here. We have a vertical caret as opposed to the horizontal one that we have in the console window. If you press insert, that will toggle between two different states basically. So this is the normal state, and then if I tap insert, you can see it'll basically flicker over that next character, so in this case H. So this will simply mean that I can now start typing and it's going to replace this here. You can also see in the section down here, okay, we have OVR, so it's going to overwrite what I type. To insert again, you'll see that goes away. Insert again, you have OVR. So what I'll do is I'll just go and start typing here. And now I might have to press delete to delete that character, and you can see how that works. So it's a bit weird, you have to kind of get used to that. Just Control Z to undo. Again, edit. You can do undo here. Control Z, redo is Control Y, right? Okay, so right up here I have these silly Boolean variables, and basically they're all the same. So is alive, and then has head and has legs. So if my character is alive, basically, then I can go and print this out. So still in the game. And so let's say is alive is prone to be false more often than these other variables. So where these other ones are typically true, is alive might often be false. I'll just run this quickly and you can see still in the game, character health is 25. And that is because all of these are true. We have and here, so all of those are true. So this will run. Okay, so let's change this to false. And to optimize this code, we really want the variable that will evaluate to false to be first. Because if you remember, I talked about the fact that if that first variable or Boolean expression will evaluate to false, then it won't even evaluate or kind of calculate the rest. Okay, it's only going to calculate the first one. If it's false, this entire thing here can never be true anyway. So it's going to just skip the rest and then skip, either to the else part, or in this case we don't have an else, so it's just going to continue down here. Okay, so we want to move is alive to this first section. That is the variable that is most likely to be false. Okay, so this is an example, but you get the idea. So of course what you could do is you can select this, and then you can do Control X, for example, and then you can go here and paste, like Control V. Then you have to paste this, kind of select this out again and paste it over here. So that can work. Okay, that is an option. You can do Control X, cut or copy or whatever you want. But in this case, what I'll do is I'll simply go and cut this one. So Control X and double click on this one. And basically what I want to do is I want to swap those out. Okay, so Control X right here. And then we can use what is known in Visual Studio as the clipboard ring. So when I go and copy or like cut things out, that is going to copy that into the clipboard stack basically. So you might be familiar with this with folders and everything else. Like if you go and cut something, it makes sense that that needs to remain in memory so that you can paste it back in again. Now the clipboard ring allows us to keep record of a bunch of things that we have in a stack basically. So I mentioned in edit here, you can show the clipboard history. That is Control Shift V. So again, typically when you paste, it's Control V. So I'll place the cursor here and press Ctrl-Shift-V. Now I have both of these variables that I copied to the clipboard using Ctrl-X. I have right in here. So we want Easeleye first. Then over here I'll just do Ctrl-Shift-V again, and then we'll have HasHead, right? So that is one way of swapping things out. You can copy a bunch of things out. And similarly, if you wanted to cut this whole thing out, okay, and replace it with this one, maybe Ctrl-X, Ctrl-Shift-V, and you can see you get this entire stack here. So now we can change those out if we wanted to. So that entire string literal shows up in here, right? Ctrl-Z to undo. And basically this won't execute now. Ctrl-F5. You can see this won't execute, so we'll only get this character health, this stuff down here. So set that back to true. Another interesting thing is you can move an entire line like this up and down. So let's say for some reason I made the mistake to go and declare and initialize this health variable down here, but I used it right here before I declared and initialized that. This will give us an error. So what I can do is I can left click and place that caret right in this line somewhere. You can have it something like that selected, or you can just have the caret in there. Then you can press and hold Alt and then use the up and down arrow keys. Okay, tap those whilst holding Alt down, and you can see that allows me to move that entire line up and down now. You can do it for lines like this one right here too, and you can move that entire line up and down using holding Alt and pressing the up and down arrow keys. You can do multi-lines as well, so I'll select these two lines, press and hold Alt, and move those up and down using the up and down arrow keys. Okay, really useful stuff. Another useful feature is the auto list members feature, which you can actually turn off, but it's really useful. So for example, we have these variables, and let's say we want to change, whether they are true or false. So we have two here that starts with this has, so has head, has legs. So as soon as I start typing, we can do has, and then this pops up right here, which I often refer to as IntelliSense, a member like viewer, and you can filter by what shows up. So you can filter variables and constants, for example, and I will see those variables show up. So I can double click on what I want, or you can typically also press, for example, once I have something selected, you can do tab. So I have has legs, for example, you can just press tab, or you can do spacebar. You can just basically keep typing and it should select that, right? Now let's say I go to has and that list does not pop up. Okay, we want to have that list back. You can, for example, type has out, and as soon as you left click, that menu goes away. So you can get that back by pressing Control and spacebar. So Control and spacebar brings this menu back. Now you can select what you want. And again, this is very useful since it allows us to keep working without having to memorize like each and every variable. Because again, these programs that we write now, for the most part, are like fairly easy. But as soon as your program becomes very complex, it's going to be difficult to like remember each and every variable. And you have to go back and forth between files and stuff, or scroll to like see what the variables are. So this is a time saver. And you can go to Tools, Options, and under Text Editor, you can go to C/C++, and you can see you have this feature right here, Auto List Members. If I have that off, and I start typing now, you can see it does not show up. Control spacebar, and then it actually will show up. So I'll just go and enable that again, Auto List Members, and that should work now. Okay, you can see that you have a bunch of other options again under Text Editor and C/C++. You can turn on and off line numbers. Okay, those lines right there if you want to maybe get rid of some visual clutter, if you want to do that. For the most part, I prefer to have those on, so line numbers. You also have this automatic brace completion. Okay, so basically what happens is if I'll just go and cancel that, and you can add a block of code anywhere, pretty much. And as soon as you type the opening curly bracket, you can see that that will insert a corresponding closing curly bracket, which can be very useful, but you can also find that kind of frustrating. So you can go and turn that off if you want to do that. Again, under Tools, Options, right here. Okay, under General, you can turn that automatic brace completion, you can turn off. Then you can also check out formatting, for example, whether you want things to be automatically formatted. So basically, Visual Studio helps us with formatting, okay, to make things more readable. So you can see that is true with a semicolon or with a closing curly brace. Same thing when you paste something, you can do something like indent and format and so on. So this one, for example, automatically format statement when I type a semicolon. I'll just close out to that. That is enabled, so I'll close out to this. And so let's say I go and remove some of these spaces. Okay, I remove that semicolon and I'll type that semicolon again. You can see it goes and adds spaces right after those commas right here again. And that is simply to make it easy to read. That is white space, so I can actually go and remove those. Control F5, my program will run. It does not affect my code. But as you can see, it is easier to read this way. Okay, so it helps with formatting. Again, you can turn that off, especially if you do not like the style that is given by default. Okay, the type of formatting. Okay, so on the topic of indentation, so for the most part to indent we use tabs. Okay, so we do not use spaces. So right here in the start of this boolean, for example, you will not go, let's say I press backspace to remove that tab, I will not go and add, a bunch of spaces to go and indent this. I will press tab, press the tab key. And that applies to multiple lines as well. So select multiple lines, press tab to add to that indentation. You can also remove tabs or, remove from that indentation by pressing and holding shift and then tapping the tab key. So tab to add to your indentation or, to add tabs, and again, shift and tab to remove. So this is also really useful in Word and PowerPoint, for example. So you can do tab to again indent, shift tab to remove from that indentation. And here I have this bullet, and then you can kind of nest a bullet right under that one, and you can then go and change the bullet type. You can also auto format the section. So let's say again I remove these spaces. We talked about the options that as soon as you add a semicolon to the end there, it'll go and auto format. I have a few other options. So I'll just remove the spacing, for example, maybe mess up the indentation. Again, indentation is important for readability. Okay, so you can see I went ahead and changed some of that indentation. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll select all of this. Then I'll do Control K, Control and F for format, and you can see that it will indent those lines and it will also fix these, go and add spaces here to improve readability. You can toggle between that simply clicking the undo and redo. You can see like the changes that makes. Again, you can go to edit and then you can do advanced, for example, and then you can do indenting right here. And right up here you have format document, format selection, again that's Control K, Control F, and so on. If you pay attention, you can see you also have make uppercase, make lowercase, and various other features. So I definitely recommend that you go into the edit menu, and then you have advanced, for example, and then you can play around with some of these options to see what they do. So you can, for example, expand selection to containing block or expand selection. Then under outlining, you have a few options as well toggle outlining expansion, Control M, Control M, toggle all outlining, Control M, Control L. So what is this outlining stuff? Well, you can see that we have these code blocks, as I mentioned. So an if statement, for example, has a code block. You can also write a code block like anywhere you want. So down here, for example, okay, and you can see that this shows up, this minus to this, and this column here to the left. You have this minus thing, so you can click, and as you can see, that will kind of allow us to roll up this section of code. I'll just delete that. So this if statement here, for example, you can see this has, it has this here as well with a minus. So if I left click on that, you can see it rolls up that code block or that compound statement that contains all of this code in here. Okay, and you can see it looks like this. Now you'll also see that here you can see line 8 and then 12, and then in this box you see that changes from a minus to a plus. So it means that we can expand that again. Okay, and so that is what this outlining has to do with. So toggle outlining expansion, and that is, again, is Control M, Control M. You can also do toggle all outlining, Control M and Control L. You can see that will go and roll everything up now. Okay, so a quick note here is you can actually turn this outlining off altogether. Go to Edit, Outlining, and then Stop Outlining. You can see those like brackets and those boxes with the minus and plus symbols now go away. Then you can go to Outlining, and then you can go to Start Automatic Outlining. You can see that will bring those back again. So those are some of the outlining options, and as I mentioned, I recommend that you come and play with some of the other options in here as well. You can see IntelliSense, for example. You can see we have list members, so that is Control J. You can go down here, for example, and do Control J. You can see you can go and filter these by variables and constants, for example. You can see is alive, health, has head, has legs, and some of the other things that are available, like see out, for example, and so forth. And that is Control J. So it's just a matter of going in and looking at what is available. We already talked about this complete word, which is Control and space. And you also have interesting things here like surround with, for example, which is Control K, Control S. So if I select this here, do Control K, Control S, you can see you have a few things. You have do, you have else, you have for, so loops, for example, while, and so on. So let's just do if. And now I can see this line here gets wrapped up in an if statement. Okay. Okay, another cool feature that I'd like to show is if you go to Edit, IntelliSense, and then you can do Insert Snippet. So we talked about surround with. Now this Insert Snippet, you can see Control K, Control X, is kind of similar to surround with, but surround with will surround whatever we have currently with, let's say, an if statement or some loop, whatever we want. Insert Snippet is going to insert, let's say, an if statement or switch statement or a loop or something like that, and it can save you some time. So Insert Snippet, I'll just left click on that, and then maybe I'll do an if since we are familiar with that, and you can see it inserts an if, the parentheses, and we also get the opening and closing curly braces. So that is Control K, Control X, and then we can search maybe for while. You can see you have a while loop. You also have for. So as you type, you can sort this or search this to make it even faster. You don't have to scroll this thing. Okay. So let's say the for loop. I'll just click that to select it. So as a beginner, you might kind of forget, okay, what do we need in a for loop? So this is a quick way of getting this template in here. So those shortcuts are a bit tedious, it's a bit long. So there is a kind of a quicker way of doing that. You can simply write if, for example. So if, then press tab, because you can see it is highlighted right here. In the IntelliSense, you have if, and then it's a if code snippet for if statement. So I can just press tab here, that will pretty much do now the same thing. It's going to insert this template. Same thing if I do the for loop, press tab, it'll insert that. And same thing for the while loop, for example. And so I'm trying to, show you like why this works in the first place. You type out while, that while keyword, and then IntelliSense pops up, and you can see it has that highlighted, and then you see while code snippet for while loop. Okay, so that is why it works. So just press tab, and you can see that will complete this statement. So it's a quick way of getting the outline, because now you don't have to go and type all of these, the parentheses, the opening, closing curly bracket, and all of that stuff. It's set up for you already. Okay, so that's another useful feature. Okay, so let's say we have a huge file with like many lines of code, and we are looking for a specific variable or function, for example. How can we do that? Well, we can go to Edit, Find and Replace, and then you can do Quick Find. So the shortcut for that is Control F. And then this box comes up here, so I can search health, for example. And you can see those will highlight. Then you can do F3, or you can click this button to kind of go through them till you find the specific instance that you're looking for. If you reach the end, it's going to show you that. Find reached the starting point of the search. Basically, it went through all of those already. Then we also have under Edit, Find and Replace, we have Quick Replace. So again, you can type in what you want to search for, basically. Again, let's say health, and we want to replace all of those instances or some of those instances with something else like mana, for example. And so as we click through here, you can see the highlighting will change slightly. Okay, this one is a bit darker than the other ones. And so we can now click Replace Next, and you can see it will replace that health string or word with whatever we type here. And you can also do Replace All. Okay, then it's going to replace all of those instances with whatever we type in here. So you can also toggle between Find and Replace modes, clicking this button. As you can see, it brings in this replace section. Okay, so this stays the same. It basically just brings in this extra section with these extra options. So again, that is Control F to find and Control H to replace. Now I would like to mention, if I bring up Google Chrome here, let's say you have some web page and you want to search for something. What you can do is also Control F. This should be universal to most other web browsers as well. So Control F to find. So let's say I'm looking for USD. You can see those instances will highlight. If you scroll through, it'll show you how many instances, and you can click these buttons to like find the next or previous instances. So let's say LOPS. Okay, click through here to find those instances till we can like find some definition that we are looking for or something like that. This is also useful in the documentation. If you are looking for specific function or variable type or something like that, you can go to the documentation, so the Microsoft documentation, for example, and then simply do Control F and then search for what you are looking for instead of, having to scroll the whole document. So it's not just for finding stuff in here, it's also useful in other applications. Okay, so in this video we talked about tips and tricks in Visual Studio. The goal was not to cover all of the tips and tricks in Visual Studio in this like one video, because there are things that we have not discussed. So functions, for example, especially when we go and separate out header files and source files in the next module 102, then you can like automatically create the implementation from your declaration, for example, and stuff like that, and various other tips and tricks that we'll learn like as we go along. I just wanted to kind of show you some of the basics, and I do hope you go and practice this. So using backspace and delete, for example, or home and end, to navigate the cursor. Of course, you can always just go and click stuff, but in some cases it can save you some time, and you do then have a few extra kind of tools and tricks up your sleeve. I would also definitely recommend once again that you learn touch typing. I feel like if you go and hunt for keys maybe with 2 fingers and you constantly have to look at the keyboard and then like where you type, in which case you probably already made a mistake, right? It's much faster kind of to fix your mistake as you are typing when you do touch typing. I think I typed like that for a while, like before I learned touch typing, and I just feel touch typing is much faster. You don't need to like know the exact position of each and every key. You just need to know those that you'll actually use mostly, and as you program, you'll learn those. So again, if you are kind of struggling with that, then I would look at something like Mavis Beacon teaches typing. I still have a very old version of Mavis Beacon that I actually have to run in compatibility mode. It's kind of fun. It has games and various other things that you can use to practice your typing, and again, it doesn't really take that long before you no longer have to look at the keyboard to find the characters that you are looking for. And at first, it's easy to be concerned with speed, but that's not really the point. You simply have to learn the keys first, and then with time you'll type faster. I'm not overly concerned with speed, but for me again, it's like I can now concentrate on what it is that I'm trying to type, what I'm trying to do in the editor or in the IDE, as opposed to where the keys are on the keyboard. Alright, so just a few tips and tricks and stuff for you. I hope you found this useful, and I'll see you in the next video.